the subject. And that's what makes it so humbling to be a photographer, because you never know. The instant a flashlight hits somebody's face, that microsecond makes the picture, or not makes the picture, and you never know.
Paul Hansen is a Swedish photojournalist based in the capital of Sweden, Stockholm. He grew up in Gothenburg, which is another big city in Sweden. His photography started off as a hobby and ended up becoming his job. Paul Hansen has worked as a freelancer in New York and at two of the biggest daily newspapers in Sweden, Expressen and Dagens Nyheter. His first camera was given to him when he was 11 years old. It was an Instamatic he got as a gift from his uncle Gordon. Since he was a little bit socially awkward or handicapped, as he says himself, the camera was a way for him to get out and socialize. In an interview, Paul Hansen describes his experience with his first camera as a little bit like taking a dog out for a walk. The camera was a ticket for him to break through his isolation and get out in the world. Paul Hansen is an active photojournalist and works everywhere around the world. He has worked in war zones and places that are unstable, which has led to him getting shot and injured. Hansen was working in Mosul in Iraq, where him and his team were documenting Iraq military forces trying to take back their city from the terrorist organization IS. Hansen was shot by a sniper twice, but managed to get to a hospital and survived. What motivates Paul Hansen the most is his curiosity. In an interview, he talks about his childhood and how he grew up poor, and how that is something he does not want to let go. He explains how he has a perspective from underneath, and that he wants to keep having that. Hansen explains, "We as humans identify someone that's strong by looking at what a person has accomplished." He says that we look at movie stars and artists as people that have succeeded and we see them as strong. But when we look at old or handicapped people, we see them as weak. This theory about what we define as strong, weak, healthy, and normal is something that Hansen likes to twist and move around. Paul Hansen uses a Canon EOS 5D Mark XI camera, which is very helpful when taking pictures in war zones and crisis areas. Moments come and go, and to have a camera with autofocus and a fast shutter speed is making it easier for photographers like Paul Hansen to capture these moments. Before this new technique was invented, it was a lot harder for photographers to take good pictures, with objects moving fast, and when most war zone environments made it impossible for photographers to stay still in one spot for too long.
Children have to die. As a photographer, I mean, going to these types of situations, I'm there. I sometimes get asked the question, how do you deal with it? This thing is the last thing you do. There's so many more things that happens before you even take a picture. And also in saying that, the pictures that you don't take are also very important. That you might sit next to the person, you talk to them, you explain at length why you're there, and first and foremost, you know yourself why you are in this situation. And first and foremost, I'm there as a human being. I mean, if I could do anything to help, I would do that first.
On Paul Hansen's website, it says, "In covering events, whether it is in Haiti, Bosnia, Afghanistan, or back home in Sweden, there is always one common denominator that links his work together: empathy." In an interview, Hansen tells us about a common question around war photographers. If someone gets shot in front of you, do you take a picture or do you help? This is something that makes him feel very upset because empathy means a lot to him. Hansen wants people to know that wherever he is working, he is there as a human first of all. Photographers and photojournalists come in after that. As a photographer, it is very hard to go into situations where people are experiencing trauma, grief, and stress, as in situations such as war and disaster. Paul Hansen is not a biased photojournalist. In his job at the daily newspaper Dagens Nyheter, he photographs a variety of objects. Most of his famous work is in war zones, but he has taken pictures of the Swedish royal couple Victoria and Daniel, the tsunami in 2004, an injured man's 1-year rehabilitation and funerals, etc. Both subjects look relaxed and comfortable. The picture shows a soldier that has returned back home and is greeted by his girlfriend. The young lovers are happy to see each other again. The couple is placed all the way to the right side of the photograph. This demonstrates the rule of thirds in how the photographer let the background take up more space than the main objective, even though the couple is the first thing you notice. The photograph is taken from a distance with several objects in front of the main focus. By keeping this angle and put the objects out of focus, the photographer brings the image alive. This also made it seem like the photographer was sneaking up on the couple. The light in this photograph is what makes it interesting. The girl standing behind the wall showing how she's missing one hand is very dramatic. The beam of sunlight that managed to glimpse through the little hole in the wall makes the picture stand out even more. The main subject is very small in the picture. The little girl takes up about 1/6 of the image, which leaves a lot of space for the background. If the photograph had been cropped into only showing the little girl, the image would have become much more simple. The jacket in the background that brings a little bit of color into the picture and the sunbeam that strikes the girl through the wall would have been left out and made the image look very plain. The texture of this photograph is rough. The surrounding of the image makes it seem like it's dirty and dusty. It creates a feeling that the little girl should not be out there alone in that kind of environment. This photograph is a very simple picture of a war victim in Sierra Leone. The simplicity of the picture creates a good focus on the victim and how he or she has an injured eye. The photograph is cropped so that nothing more than the main focus is visible. The contrast in the picture is high. This creates a darker background and more focus on the victim. The high contrast also lightens up the white parts about the image, which enables us to focus on the important stuff of the picture, the missing eye. The photograph is taken in modern time when color film is available. Paul Hansen still took this photo in black and white to not let any colors draw too much attention. This leaves the picture with focus on the victim's face and nothing else. Paul Hansen has not had a specific picture that affected society in a significant way, but his work is known and gives his readers a deep understanding of what we as a society see as weak.
The image that gave him the most attention was the Gaza burial that got awarded World Press Photo of the Year. After winning the contest, Hansen said, "I'm very happy, but also very sad. The family lost 2 children and the mother is unconscious in a hospital. This image does not reflect the first and not the last children killed in a war." Paul Hansen managed to capture that moment and the feeling of grief and sorrow and made that feeling reach out to the viewer.
I remember this alleyway very vividly because it was one of the spots that was very much a refugee camp. It was very narrow and it was very crowded and dusty. And when they walked in, the dust flew up and they were screaming. And I ran ahead of the procession to try to get the shape of the procession. It took more the form of the procession than before. It was more a mass of people in the open square. And then I walked backwards, and then the light hits the wall and it hits some shutters on the windows that's open. So it was just a few meters that the light and everything came together, but I had no idea when I was taking it.
I am an accounting major, and accounting is more focused on numbers and not so much about art and writing, which I believe is more important in photojournalism. Although we have been talking about earning management, which is how you can make your company look better using different accounting methods. This chapter also talks about moral and how far you are willing to go to make your company's financial statement look better. Are you willing to commit fraud? Paul Hansen has a high moral and cares a lot about what is wrong and what is right. In an interview, he mentions how he always put being human before anything else he does for work. And I think that is something that accountants should think about before doing that one little thing that makes them commit fraud. Paul Hansen is viewed as a very down-to-earth man that is very considerate about always being a human before anything else. On one of his books he published, Maria Lundqvist from the daily paper Svenska Dagbladet says that Paul Hansen is a very believable man, and he managed to put that into both his photographs and texts. Other people says that he takes pictures that are alive. Per Lindström says that even though Hansen's pictures mostly covers hopelessness and misadventures, he managed to find focus on the everyday life moments in a reality that is nothing but normal.